Welcome to Author Life Podcast, where myself and guest authors share their stories, offer tips and advice, and share our writing, publishing, and marketing knowledge. I'm your host, Delcherie Gladden. All right, so welcome back to Author Life Podcast. This week I'm really excited because I have a new group of authors kind of through a connection through our Best-Selling Reads Partner podcast with AJ Llewellyn. We're going to be talking to a group of authors who were involved in the Island Fever anthology. So we're going to introduce everybody first, and then we're going to talk more about how this anthology came together and what it was like working on this project. So Patty, go ahead and start us off.
Okay, I'm Patricia Logan, and I was asked to contribute by AJ Llewellyn, who's a very good friend of mine here in Los Angeles, and we've been friends forever. We write in the same genre, and we've written actually Hawaiian stories in the same Kindle world when Toby Neal had a Kindle world long time ago, and so she asked me to participate in the anthology, and I said, of course, I'll contribute a story. Why not?
Awesome. All right, and Ellen?
I'm Elaine Gunn. I got into it through Sisters in Crime, and AJ and I are the current vice president and president of the group. And I've been writing. I've got 7 published books so far. I got writing early in life as a stringer in my high school, and then I went to college and was on the campus newspaper, and then went off in an entirely different career and became a pediatric orthopedic surgeon. And so for the next 40 years, I basically wrote nothing but research articles. But then I became a world traveler and on trips to various places like Yap and Palau and other places you've probably never heard of. There's nothing to do at night, and so I started writing short stories and accumulated a whole bunch of those and 4 novels, and didn't have any idea of how to do anything with them. So I started going to writers' conferences and bumped into a member of the Sisters in Crime in Hawaii, and that's how I got into it. So.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always interesting to hear the paths that bring people to and from writing. All right.
I just want to say I've heard of Palau because they did a season of Survivor in Palau, the TV series.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it looked really amazing.
Palau is one of my favorite places to go, and I'm an avid scuba diver, and the best scuba diving in the world is in Palau, I think.
I can imagine.
Very neat. All right, Catherine?
Aloha, I'm Catherine Knorr, and by day I'm a litigation attorney, and in my very few moments of spare time, I write novels. I actually started with a nonfiction book, a textbook in sports risk management, and Steve Novak, who is here today, he and I started a writers group, and we actually plugged along for about 11 years, and I ended up through that writing a legal mystery novel series, and starting with the book Land Sharks, and the last one was Zana West Diary, which was published last year. So I've been enjoying kind of second career.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, AJ?
Hi, I'm AJ Llewellyn, and I'm one of the best-selling authors with this group and with the lovely Delcherie Gladden. And I want to thank you again, Delcherie, for organizing this podcast. I love doing this because it's a really great way for authors to connect and for people who may read our books or not read them to get to know us. But I have over 300 romance novels published. A lot of them are romantic mysteries. But I've been president of Sisters in Crime. This is my 2nd year. in Hawaii, and it's actually my last year because you can only run for 2 years. And I really want us to do an anthology with the authors because we've all gotten to know each other pretty well. And I wanted to do something because everybody was locked in because of COVID. And when I started thinking about it and talking to everyone, I realized that Hawaii has had more than its fair share of different diseases, all introduced by foreigners. So I thought it'd be really interesting if everybody picked a different disease, like the old Marcus Welby TV show, Disease of the Week, and wrote stories, mysteries or romances around it. And so I was really glad when everyone jumped in. We did not make it a Sisters in Crime book because I really want everybody to make money, and hopefully we'll sell so that we can share the profits. But it was actually Elizabeth Hartz who came up with the title Island Fever. So thank you, Elizabeth. And Meg, who's here, she was the editor. And it's just been really fun seeing people, because some of the authors are unpublished previously, like Steve, but just to see everybody embrace the topic and really produce just wonderful stories. That, to me, has been the most gratifying part.
Oh, that's really cool. All right, so Elizabeth, let's hear from you.
Hello, and I'm really happy to be here, and thanks for making this possible for us, Cherie and AJ. I heard about this through our Sisters in Crime meeting from AJ, and I thought it was a wonderful opportunity for me to try my hand at writing fiction. This is my second fictional mystery short story. So it was a really growing learning experience. I'm like the lady who wrote Gone with the Wind. I think I only have one book in me because my memoir was a true story about a murder that happened here in Hawaii, so that was in the 80s. And so anyway, I've done a lot of writing in connection with the spin-off of that, I'm very much for gun control because my friend was murdered with a gun, and I've spun out into other things, but I really appreciated the chance to do this short story, because it's a sequel to one I wrote and that was published in 2017. So anyway, it was a wonderful opportunity, very enjoyable. I got to interact with all these wonderful writers, and so for that, I thank AJ and the wonderful editor, Meg, who put it all together, made it all good.
That's great. All right, Rose, let's hear from you.
Aloha. I'm Rose Teagarden, and I was sitting here trying to go back to sleep. I write Hawaii stories, basically with strong female characters. I just published my third novel. It's a sequel to my second novel in the Hawaiian Tiger Princess Chronicles. And I would like to thank you and AJ and Meg for all the hard work that they put in to making this anthology possible. I've done as little as possible in my life other than travel and enjoy my life. So I don't have long credits. When I become unhappy, I had a bad habit of detaching my boat from the dock and just sailing away. So I don't work on conflict very well. But now that I've gotten older, I've tried to be more patient with people, and I had to give up my boat and because it just wasn't feasible. And so everything's been a learning experience. I met the Sisters in Crime at a book and music festival here in Honolulu, which unfortunately they have not run for the last 4 years now. I live here in Waikiki. I can do like Jack Lord and survey my neighborhood from the 28th floor, make sure that there's no criminals going on there. Right now, we're really quiet. The homeless shut up once the sun was fully up. For holiday weekend, we haven't had many emergency vehicles past here. I've got a towel in case they start with the sirens so I can put it over the speaker so you don't have to listen to them going down the street. But yes, I'd like to thank you for hosting this.
No problem. I'm excited. All right, Steve, let's hear from you.
Well, I have to thank both Catherine and AJ because, as Catherine said, we were members of the same writing group for a long time. I was working on my second business book, and Catherine and the other members of the group told me that the business book was boring, so I started trying to liven it up. I interviewed some business owners and executives here to try to liven it up, and that didn't do it. So I started making up stories to go along with it, and it didn't really liven up the business book, but they convinced me I was better at fiction than the business stuff. So I started working on a novel many years ago, which I'm still not completed yet. But I started writing short stories as exercises to help me with my novel writing. And I think I shared some with Catherine, and she convinced AJ to allow me to submit a story for this anthology, and it's been wonderful for me. It's been a great learning experience, the whole process of it. And working with a professional editor, Meg, has been wonderful. I've since hired her for other work since working with her on this, because it's just been great. So I'm madly submitting short stories to literary magazines in hopes of I don't know what, but finished the second run through of my novel. I'm gonna try to wrap that up and see where that goes.
Oh, good. And I'd like to come back to the experience of working with an editor, because I think that's really interesting, especially for new writers, to learn a little bit more about that. So remind me after we finish the intros. All right. So Meg, let's hear from you since you were just mentioned.
Aloha, I'm Megan Moore. I write under 3 different names. When I write the murder mysteries, I write under J.M. Calverley, which is my maiden name. I'm a New Zealander and I'm Islander, deep lover of Hawaii. It's my American home state, so it's home to me, to my soul. I've known AJ quite a long time now. She started out as a client. She was a friend of some other friends of ours, and then we became friends. So it was really, really wonderful. She got me also, like Patty, who's also one of my clients, and Steve. Very nice having her around here. She got me into Toby's World as well, and it was the first murder mystery I wrote. And then, of course, that disbanded, and we all went on to do our own thing. So that is probably my main writing thing these days. I don't write my other 2 as much. I started out as an erotica writer and also wrote the male romances, and I'm lucky I had a few male readers as well. That was quite a novelty. But I ended up in this murder mystery series, and I have one of my series, which is my detectives, Reef Kahili and Kalani Rogers, and they became my main series. And I love these guys. They're a lot of fun to work with. They're all parts of me. I think a lot of writers use different parts of themselves. And they're a lot of fun to work with, a lot of fun to see what's going to happen next, because I don't know. I'm just writing it down. I don't really have any control over that. So it was really great to be involved in this series because I hadn't written for a while. I'm pretty busy. I'm a therapist as well, also an editor, as you've probably heard. And I do another part-time job as well, so it can get really busy. So, for writing, you need time to be able to muse, and I haven't had time to muse. So I was the last author that came on for this series, getting her story in last. Sorry, everybody. But as the editor, at least I could edit it fast. So yeah, that's how I got into this. So it's been a great opportunity for me to write again. I've loved it.
Oh, that's good.
I love working with it too. It's fun.
Yeah, I can sympathize with the craziness of life and trying to fit in writing and everything else that we all have going on. I've been in the same boat the last few years. All right.
Can I just say, this is AJ speaking. Patty and Meg both mentioned the Toby Neal Kindle World series, which is still one of the best experiences of my life. I really am grateful to Toby because she made over $1 million selling her late crime series, and she opened up her world to other authors. And she let me write these stories. And Meg and I knew each other as romance writers on Facebook. And she emailed me and said, how did you get into this Kindle World series? And by the way, there are a lot of typos in your story. Do you mind me mentioning that? I said, no. And I wanted to punch her face in. What do you mean there are typos? She said, I'll edit it for free. I said, okay. Withholding the urge to say something rude. She said, if you like it, you can pay me in the future. And I looked at this edit, and it was a sea of red. I think everyone here can relate to it. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this story went out like this. So that was 9 years ago, and she's been my editor ever since. I turned her on to Patty. Patty and I have been at this, we go back to the age of the dinosaur in publishing. Okay.
Thank you.
It's true.
True.
We really do. And I have to tell you, we've both had some of the same editors who were truly horrific, that were being paid by us and publishers to edit, and they would just go bye-bye, and you'd be like, where did they go? My book's coming out, the edit's missing. And I'm so grateful that Meg came on with the anthology, because I know some of the authors were like, oh my God, but you know what? She's the best. And I think I'm so glad Steve is working with her. I know Elaine said to me that he's going to hire her for something. And on that note, Josephine, you're up next.
I am back. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Thank you, Cherie, for hosting this. I'm very happy to be here. AJ pulled me into this group, and I was really excited to be a part of it, and to meet all these other authors, because I'm fairly new at this. I had my first book published, I guess about 8-10 months ago in December, and actually I had 2 books that came out. I did a double book. I had a Christmas follow-up to my first novel. So I was really happy to see how the process worked for everybody else. It was great working with Meg. It was great working with everybody. And it was kind of exciting because during our meetings, we get tidbits of everybody's story, but not enough to really know what they were all about. When the book finally came in final form, it was really exciting to read everybody's final product. And they were all very good. I enjoyed all the stories. So it's been a great experience. I thank AJ for that as well. And everybody in the group.
Well, I'm so glad you came on board. Thank you.
All right. So I think we got everybody for intros, right?
Can I just say, Meg is beyond an amazing editor, because we had a fairly prominent Hawaiian author who actually wanted to submit a story to us, and Meg and I really liked it. But I'm so grateful to you, Meg, because she did a tiny bit of research and discovered the entire story was plagiarized.
Yeah.
I mean, word for word from 5 different sources. So she's not only a great content editor, line editor, but she does her research. We all would be in serious trouble right now, and you'd be interviewing us from jail, from behind bars. So, I cried when I read that email. I thought, no.
I was like, I was fuming.
It's amazing that someone would attempt that.
Wow. You know, we've put so much work into this, and you know, Patricia is an international best-selling author. By the way, she has the #1 book on Amazon right now.
Oh, that's awesome! Congrats! How cool!
She's amazing.
Congratulations!
So I hang on to her coattails. No, but seriously, she does have the #1 book on Amazon, and I'm so proud of you, babe. You've worked so hard.
Thank you. And that was edited by Meg. Yeah.
Hey, Meg, where your
that's this one. That's Prince of LA over here.
Oh my God, fantastic.
Fantastic cover.
Yes. I'm so glad.
And the same cover artist, AJ Corsa, did the cover for Island Fever.
She did all of these. All of these covers for me. Yeah, I've been working with AJ Corsa for a long time.
And you turned me on to AJ.
And you turned me on to AJ.
So what I was going to say was, I sent Meg as a thank you from all the authors. There is a bakery on the Big Island, because she's a Big Island girl, where they ship loaves of bread, Hawaiian bread, all over the country. And I sent her 3 different loaves in a box from all the authors. And thank you. And she sent me a photo and she was buttering the bread. Was it good?
My God, thank you. It was delicious.
Good.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I get the box because every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, it's home. It's home. It's beautiful. Thank you. It was such a nice thing to get. Thank you, Rima.
Cool.
I'm doing a thing on both my Facebook pages where I put just a 10-word description of the chapter that you've written and a special photo of the area where the incident took place. I've done the first 3 chapters.
That's very cool. And what's the name of your Facebook page, Rose? Is it just your name?
Rose, yeah.
Rose Tea Garden?
Rose Tea Garden.
Okay, so yeah, anybody who's listening, check that out, and then you can get a little bit more info about each of the stories and where they took place. I think that's a really cool idea, Rose. And that leads us in. I wanted to have everybody, and you can go in whatever order you want to, just give, without giving away the ending of your particular story, a little bit of info about your story, what the inspiration was, and how you approached it.
I can go first.
Okay.
Mine is the honeymoon. And I was inspired by the Gabby Petito story. And if you remember that she and her fiance, Brian Laundrie, went on a trip and there was some video of them having sort of like domestic violence encounters with the police. And she went missing and her body was later found. And so was Brian Laundrie's. And so that inspired me to write a story about a couple who goes on a hiking trip or a camping trip to Maui. And so anyway, it starts out with them in Seattle during COVID era, and they ultimately go to Maui, and it's kind of fun. But I want to tell you that when I wrote it, I actually had COVID. And so there was a deadline, and having COVID made me sit still for a little while and allowed me to write it. However, I have to say that I didn't have a fever, and actually having COVID didn't influence the story in any way.
Interesting.
Who's next? Okay. Can I just say, Alan writes his AK Gun, and he very kindly wrote 2 stories for us, 2 very different fevers, 2 different stories, but he also has the title story, which we all love. So do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, that would be the one I would like to talk about because, one of my careers, I was in the U.S. Army for 20 years and worked up at Tripler Army Medical Center. And as a pediatric orthopedic surgeon, I was for many years the chair of the Child Abuse Committee. So every time that a child came in with suspected abuse, we would discuss that. And I had a conference basically every Friday afternoon about child abuse, and I learned a lot about that. I also became very good friends with a guy named Kemp, he coined the term battered child syndrome and was the first one to really describe this phenomenon of child abuse. And he gave a lecture while I was an intern about this, and then moved to Hawaii and worked in the hospital that I ultimately ran, a hospital that was across the street from the place where Henry Kemp worked. And so I wanted to write about island fever because what happens is military people come to Hawaii and frequently they come with their families, and the military guys never have any problem because they're so busy that they don't feel like they have any problems. But the women frequently that come with them get really severe island fever. They feel totally divorced from where they go, and they don't trust their neighbors because they're a different race and frequently different religion, and So the setup for the women is really important. And so I wanted to write about that particular type of island fever.
It's a really great story. Thank you.
And
It's a fascinating perspective. I think probably a lot of people don't know.
Megan and I talked about it a lot when she was editing it.
Yes.
And it's so different. He also wrote a story called Cabin Fever. So you're just very gifted, all of you.
Very good twisties. Great
Yes.
twisties. You'll love the twisty in Cabin Fever too.
Good.
So I just want to say, Patty Logan, she did her story Extinction, actually loosely based on a very prominent movie star who did a really jerky thing. Patty?
Yes, let's hear about it, Patty.
My story's titled Extinction, and it uses the premise is that a very prominent singer and his wife, who is an animal activist, they bring some diseased dogs into the islands, and they end up with rabies. So, as you all know, probably rabies is extinct in the islands, and so they introduced it by bringing them through a private jet, and they they didn't have their animals checked, they didn't get the proper certificates, and so I have an FBI agent who's actually a profiler. He is the title character, the main character of this particular story. And it starts in Los Angeles, where they find the body of a hiker that has been, has died in the Angeles National Forest. And they determined that he died of a dog bite, rabies, that he contracted from a dog bite. And then there's the second victim in the islands on Maui. So my profiler is called to pair up with another FBI agent in Honolulu, and then they fly over to Maui to investigate the case. And one of them ends up in peril. So I don't know, what can I say about it? It's the prequel to another FBI series that I have going on at the moment. And I wanted to explore what would happen if somebody skirted the rules and just ignored everything and decided to do their own thing and bring a diseased animal.
That's what she's loosely based it on Johnny Depp and his ex-wife going to Australia. Did you all know this story?
I haven't heard that.
They went on a private plane and smuggled her dogs in to the country. And there's no rabies in Australia. You cannot just go to Australia with your pets. You have to put them in quarantine.
Yeah.
So because she's brainless, Amber Heard took the dogs to a groomer and said, "Oh, these are Johnny Depp's dogs." And the groomer put the photos all over social media. And the police came and took the dogs. And they were going to euthanize them, which is the law in Australia. Two little Yorkies. And it became an international incident.
Oh, wow.
The dogs were not euthanized because Johnny Depp blamed himself. He wasn't even there. He was doing a movie in Australia. And she was forced to leave the country with the dog. She's damn lucky that he's Johnny Depp and she got to leave. But those dogs would be otherwise dead. So every Australian, I'm an expatriate Australian, we were all just outraged that they should just turned up with these dogs.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting, especially, I mean, with islands, like it's such a delicate ecosystem, and I wasn't aware of that there basically is no rabies in the islands of Hawaii. I work at an animal shelter during the day, and we'd had a customer come in asking for proof of rabies vaccination for the cat he had adopted, and we're like, we don't do rabies. You're supposed to do that with your personal vet. And he was like, but I'm moving to Hawaii, and he has to have 2 rabies shots within 30 days or something like that. And I was just like, what? Like, I haven't heard that before. And they're like,
it's true, but you have to do it through your vet, and it all has to be documented.
Yeah, and that's one that we don't do.
Well.
I was surprised to learn more about that. But
Rose talks about in her story a very old disease in the islands. Rose?
Yes. I broke my leg last year, and it has been a real problem for me. So I used my broken leg to have a bone show up. Well, the bone shows up when the dredge is down on Cajillo Beach, dredging new beach sand to replenish the beach there. and they dredge up some ancient bones and one new one. And when they examine it, the x-ray shows that there's a rod in the bone. So it definitely isn't an ancient bone. Mm-hmm. So now they've got a suspected murder because people just don't throw their legs away in the ocean, and dredged up some ancient bones, which means there's a wreck down there. So right away, the dredging crew think they found sunken treasure, but no, they just found an old whaler, which in the end turns out that they burnt it to the ground when it sailed in with a crew that had died from smallpox, which I just gave away the ending, but you don't know who had the new bone or where that person was or who they were.
Interesting. Huh? Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to that idea of just that fragile ecosystem on such a small place of, maybe the extremes that you might have to go to protect that versus other areas of the world. So that's very interesting.
It's true, with Hawaii, smallpox came a couple of 100 years ago and wiped out huge numbers of the native Hawaiians. And when I was living on Oahu many years ago, they had broken ground to build a much needed Walmart. I'm being sarcastic, but they were going to build a Walmart, and they found this mass grave.
Oh, wow.
That was 200 years old, and they could no longer continue to excavate until they'd contacted the families. These were all smallpox victims.
Wow.
It was so sad. It was so sad. They just threw them into mass graves. They didn't know what else to do. So I was really glad you touched on that subject. So thank you, Rose.
Thank you. I grew up sailing, and you people were reading children mysteries, Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. I was reading sailing stories, like I'll use an example, Moby Dick and 3 Years Before the Bass, because they're most famous, and the Horatio Hornblower series. So I had a fair working knowledge of whalers, and I've been on whalers we had one there in Lahaina, and I've been on one in Bermuda and I think it was Newport, Rhode Island. So I know what a whaler is, and I would not have wanted to be crew on one of those boats because the stench must have been unbelievable with all of the whale oil and the lack of plumbing and rotting foods. So I try to give people that kind of a feeling that it wasn't all, we're sailing around the world and we're having an adventure and we're killing whales.
Well, that's interesting. My daughter was they just wrapped up last night. She was in a production of Treasure Island, and she kind of, as the character, makes this comment about, how exciting and how go to sea. You'll be safe from the other people trying to, get the map from her and stuff. And like all the adults in the crowd just really kind of laughed about it. They're like, yeah, that sounds great. Be on a boat for months on end with no services, back in that time period.
Like, had a huge connection to the islands. Robert Louis Stevenson, he lived there for a while. Awesome. Meg,
yes,
you wrote a fantastic story about a different kind of fever.
Yes, and honestly, I don't have all this cool stuff to say about it because my characters, I literally just slide into Reef Kahili's body and we see what's happening. I honestly don't have, I literally start my stories from like one sentence, like, we could have, what's going on? Fever, Saturday night fever. All right, let's do something with that. And so they start out, they're doing the famous Travolta scene from Saturday Night Fever, him and Kalani, and then a dead body turns up. And like I said, that's literally my plot. That's the whole plot scene. And then I just let my detectives go. So there's no great, I researched this. So I do research a lot because they're telling, my characters tell me stuff and I'm like, okay, let's go and have a look, So they end up, we end up having a couple of interesting characters, which we can't decide which one could be the murderer, but he's knocking off people in the rehab home, and it's every couple of Saturday nights, and so it is a Saturday night fever in a way because somebody's got something going on that they're obviously knocking off these people, but we don't know why the murderer, who is turns out to be a male, is knocking off people. And so my detectives, of course, go and investigate, and we get to meet a lot of island people and food and flowers. You get a lot of Hawaii in my books. It's an immersive experience. So the detectives go and investigate this, and we've got, of course, orchids involved. And I just, they, like I said, they do their own things. Reef's an orchid grower, so he's always pretty keen when there's an orchid story there. And Kalani's interesting. My characters are interesting. I'm not so much plot based. I am character based. If you love my characters, you'll probably read anything that's got them in it. So Reef is the thoughtful one. He's an unusual cop. He came back from LA, burnt out, just fried. Came back to see if he could bed back into the island. He is from Hilo. He was born and raised in Hilo. So is Kalani, and they're local boys. But Reef's a little bit, he's more educated, more thoughtful. His parents are interesting. His dad's a activist, works for Greenpeace, and is kind of hardcore, started out as a surfer, got into that, became a lawyer. And then his mum works for U of H. She's a linguist. So they're really interesting parents. She's a New Zealander. She's Maori. So she's kind of staunch, very interesting characters, which make him an interesting character. But he's got all these bits of New Zealand in him, and very Maori, very Hawaiian in many ways, but also very educated. Kalani's a bit more cruisy. He's like the original Mr. Rico Suave, gorgeous, of course. And is just an island boy, knows everybody, is related to everybody probably on the big island, I'm sure, because there's not much separation. So these guys are a great team. And then Reef's fiance is Hibby. She is Hibby O'Neill, and she is actually the assistant ME. And she's Kama'aina. She's grew up in Hawaii. She was born there. Her parents were botanists, and they named her Hibiscus plumeria. Don't you just love parents? So these are kind of my team, and they go in and solve this murder of why these women are being knocked off on a Saturday night. What's causing it? How are they dying? What's going on? So that's my crew for you.
I like this. That's fascinating.
Food and it's a lot of fun.
Lisbeth is a murder story as well, and her inspiration is actually really interesting. Josephine.
Yes.
Can we move over to you?
We can. My story is Lost Identity, and it starts out with this young woman who was adopted, and she's applying for a job with the government that requires a somewhat high level security clearance. And it's during this process that she finds out her adoption was falsified. And so the government is telling her she doesn't pass, of course, the investigation, can't get her clearance, and that she basically has no identity because there's nothing that can be verified in her adoption papers. So she was adopted in Hawaii, so she ultimately ends up having to go back there to try and find her identity. And she is having difficulty finding out where to start because when she goes to court to get the background information, there is none. So she has no name of any parent, nothing she can go on. So she goes to the police department and ends up meeting a detective there who will help her. And then they start a little romance going. There's romance that is woven into my mystery. And ultimately, he helps her track down her birth mother. And then she finds out how my fever was typhus, murine typhus. So she ultimately finds out the impact that the disease itself isn't really critical. It's been infectious bacterial disease. It's treated with antibiotics. However, in the circumstances that surrounded her birth mother contracting this disease, it completely changed the whole course of her life. And she discovers that basically at the end when she finds her identity. So that's my story.
Great.
That sounds
Thank
fascinating. I love it. Thank
Hello,
you.
hello, Lisbeth is back. I couldn't unmute myself, so I just called back.
That works too.
Lisbeth,
All right.
you have your stories about murder, and I really love the inspiration for it.
Yes, in fact, it was inspired by this talk by prosecutor Steve who Steve Novak and AJ brought in. Thank you so much.
No, it was Dennis Sahara.
Oh, I'm
Dennis
sorry.
Sahara, yeah.
Okay.
Dennis
Sorry about
isn't
that.
here. Yeah.
Anyway, he told us about a killer, Joe Henry Venezuela, who tried to disguise his killing his wife as a drowning. So that inspired me for my story, which is also about somebody who gets killed and is made to look like a drowning. And so that was the inspiration. And then the other thing that inspired me was I had written one previous short mystery story about my husband, Barry, and I wanted to write another one about him. And so in this one, we were on our honeymoon, so I called it Love Fever and Second Chances. And so it was just so much fun to write this because I haven't written that much fiction. This is only my second mystery short story. And it was just a delight to set it on the North Shore, kind of incorporate some of those elements and, just see the story kind of develop because I'm not that experienced a fiction writer. And it was really a lot of fun to have that experience. And so got into it and I got to make him a hero a second time. And the reason I wanted to feature him is because he's such a patient man. And it took me 30 years to write my memoir because it was about a true murder, and I didn't want to release it and let the murderer know that there was a book about him. So I waited till he died in 2015. The murder happened in 84, and then I was able to put my book out as a memoir instead of just a mystery.
But he never served time for that murder, did he?
He did. He had first degree. He was convicted of first degree murder. That was at a time when if you premeditate murder, then it's first degree. Then they changed the law so that only if you kill a policeman or a judge or certain people is it first degree murder. So yeah, he was convicted of first degree murder, but they set the parole for 10 years and they let him out in 8 for good behavior. And so he was out for a long time before he passed, so I didn't want him to know there was a book about him. So I changed all the names for my memoir, Angel Hero, Murder in Hawaii, a True Story.
I love that book.
Wow.
Oh, thank you so much, AJ. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Steve, can you tell us about your story? Because I love it, as you know.
I do too. Yeah.
Well, when Catherine had asked me if I wanted to submit a story after AJ okayed it, she told me the theme is fever and it has to be set in Hawaii, and that was it. And I knew her group was Sisters in Crime, so I thought, I have to write a crime story. And then I've never done that before. I try to write literary fiction where I explore what makes people tick. Why do they do the things they do? When things affect them, why does it affect them? It's kind of, the psychology of people. So I thought, how can I write a crime story and a mystery, but that's not what I normally do. So I don't know where any of this came from, but what I tried to do was my sort of main character, Taddy. I started off with she has a fever, and then, where do I go with that? So what I did was Taddy and her family have sort of idyllic family growing up. She's young and the family's all happy. But then there's a couple of events that happen. And so how do these events affect the people involved? And then I gave Taddy a fever and kind of mask things. And then when she comes out of the fever, she remembers things that had happened in the past. And then, how did that affect her? Well, then there was murder and mayhem and things like that. So that's basically kind of how I approached it and what happened, and hopefully it works.
It works.
Great story.
It's always
So I
interesting
think I'm
trying
the
to do a
last
new
author
genre.
left. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to say I wrote a story called George Harrison's Gardener, and it's actually a true story. I've changed some things, but right after 9/11, 2 months after, I went to Maui. I moved there with my best friend, and we went to Hana, and the place that we rented was just really horrible. It had no window panes. It was very
It was
hot.
really that nice.
Yeah. And then, we only had cold water, electricity in one room, and there were a lot of mosquitoes. And well, we walked into the little village, and everybody was using the payphone there. Remember payphones? And I kept seeing this man with a paddy hat, old-fashioned paddy hat, always at the payphone, and we'd wait. And my friend was a huge George Harrison fan, and we knew that he lived somewhere there. And eventually people told us where he lived, and we got the address and the directions. And well, people all around us were like dropping like flies from some mysterious disease, and the symptoms were horrific. They said they felt like their bones were breaking. And we go up to the George Harrison estate, and she's saying to me, I can't climb up the hill because his house was on the top of this hill. But there is the guy in the paddy hat, and it turns out he's George Harrison's gardener, and everybody was getting dengue fever from mosquito bites. All of it came from a mysterious place, the payphone. And the CDC came out, and they didn't tell people that dengue fever had broken out on that side of the island because they didn't want to stop tourists from coming. So you can find out about it online, but they didn't tell anyone. So dengue fever is treatable, but it's extremely painful, and it is a tropical disease. And I'm still nervous about having pools of water anywhere outside because if mosquitoes breed, you can actually get it. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to get it. In the islands, they call it breakbone fever. And my friend said she felt like someone had stuck matchsticks into her eyes. Ooh. So it is not fun. Most of the fevers we talk about are not fun, but we had fun writing the stories for sure.
Good. And I really enjoyed yours, AJ.
Can I make a little comment about that?
Yeah.
Back in during the Vietnam War, when I was at Tripler, we had hundreds of soldiers that were being treated for dengue fever. Wow. And so I've taken care of a lot of these patients with dengue fever, and it is a nasty disease. Also in Palau, I would go to Palau every year. I went to Palau every year and I'd spend basically 4 or 5 days seeing children there. And then we would do a lot of surgery. And the last time I went to Palau, they had just had a dengue fever epidemic. And what happened is that there's a hemorrhagic variety that is sort of like Ebola of dengue fever. And the scrub nurse that I worked with got that hemorrhagic variety. But the epidemic was so rampant on Palau that they had run out of all IV fluids. And so when she got her hemorrhagic fever, they had no way to treat her. And so here's this nurse at the hospital that basically dies of it because nobody can treat her at all. In that society. So I've had a good friend die of dengue fever. And it is transmitted by mosquitoes that are found in Hawaii. And I've never really understood why there wasn't a huge epidemic from these guys that were coming from Vietnam with dengue fever, because they were sitting on open wards. For mosquitoes could go in and out like crazy on those wards that we had up at Tripler, but somehow or another, it didn't lead to an island-wide epidemic. Probably because of the mosquito treatments, anti-mosquitoes. touch stuff.
Well, AJ, I think between your story and some of the others that I was able to read, it provided a really interesting contrast on like that island ecosystem versus like economy and the lengths that would be gone to keep actual fever, like with the smallpox in the boat and keeping it off the island and the rabies. But then you kind of take that on the flip side of protecting the economy and tourism, and the CDC not telling people what was going on. Like that really shocked me in your story. I was like, how could they not
I know.
alert
They
anybody
fumigated
that's
that
crazy?
payphone 400 times.
Mm.
And the night that we arrived, I'm driving. If you know Hana, once you get out to that side of the island, it's quite primitive and it's very dark at night. So I'm hunched over the wheel and I see these people in spacesuits running past us, and I thought, I'm hallucinating. And the next night, I'm driving on Saddle Road before it was developed, and we see night marches, which in Hawaiian mythology are really famous.
Yes.
They usually signal that you're going to die, and I'm thinking, don't look and you won't die, don't look and you won't die. And the whole car was shaking from them chanting and stomping and the drums. And 20 seconds after we get past them, we're both crying, thinking something's going to happen to us. We see more spacemen running past. So we see the gamut. And the spacemen were the CDC running around trying to stop this disease from happening. It was crazy. It was crazy. I'm glad they didn't
Surreal experience.
get it to spread. Yeah, I'm glad it wasn't spread, but it was really freaky.
Man.
The thing about dengue fever is that mosquito is an indoor mosquito. It prefers people to, it's not one that you're going to find in the forest. It's living in your house. When we went to Fiji one time, they were having a dengue fever epidemic, and everybody was being advised to lock their doors at night. Well, that's, fumigate, but fumigate your house and lock the doors, but don't lock the doors without fumigation. Because that actually increases the
population of
getting the
mosquitoes.
disease. Yeah.
Wow. So Meg, I had a question for you.
During the same time of the dengue fever, they came to our condo, and I was the only one that they could find that would talk to them. And there had been an outbreak in our neighborhood in Kihei. And they asked if I could talk to the other homeowners in the area and the resident managers and make them understand that we cannot have any standing water. And I took them around and showed them our building, and we found several puddles and a couple of old paint cans with water standing on them, up on our roof. So I got rid of all of that stuff and made sure that it got cleaned up, and we never heard anything other than when the CDC came to talk to somebody in the neighborhood, which turned out to be me.
Good for you, Rose.
Oh, yeah. So Meg, I was going to ask you, having edited the anthology, how big of a challenge was that to kind of bring these different types of stories, different types of fevers, and make them work together?
Oh, well, that part was easy because when you first start, you think, oh gosh, what are we going to get? Because I always think, oh, we're going to get all the same stories. And of course, nobody writes from the same perspective. So what was fascinating as these stories came together was how different they all were. We didn't really have any that were like, oh, well, that's quite like that one. They were also different. They all had different perspectives. Of course, each writer has its own voice, which makes each story very unique. And everybody filled out something completely different, which was fantastic. They were a lot of fun to read. I love editing, and they were a lot of fun to read, to see what people came up with, to see the perspectives, to see the stories. A lot of them were based on true stories, which was interesting, knowing that that's actually out there. Like AJ, I didn't realize you'd actually seen night marches. I would probably die of fright.
We were crying, the two of us. Oh my God. And I'm driving on this dirt road looking for this stupid house. And, I'm glad I had the experience. But, at the time after 9/11, everybody thought it was, there are some crazy people in Hana to this day. Some of them were saying it's bioterrorism because it was 2 months after 9/11. No, it wasn't bioterrorism. It was a natural disease. But at first, you start to think, oh, is it really? Is this juice safe to drink? Is it safe to do this? You start to panic. And I think that's the whole thing about people fever. People do panic.
Yes.
Yeah.
With or without justification.
AJ, your story is in a whole new perspective for me now, because I know you kept telling me my story is based on true occurrence. It's true. I didn't know it was your story, though. I thought maybe the only thing true about it was that George Harrison's gardener was using the phone, and that the rest was your, fiction story. But now that I know the whole thing is true and it's your story, it puts it in a really different perspective for me.
Well, except that I also changed the two characters from two women who were friends to two men who were a couple and aren't anymore. But, the interesting thing about George Harrison was we went up to the estate. It's still there. It is one of the most spectacular pieces of land I've ever seen. But his house was gorgeous. It's still there. I don't know if you all know that before we went, a woman, a fan of his, went up there and she broke in. Do you all know this story? No?
I don't do news. Yeah, so I have no idea.
She broke in. I actually reference her in my story, but she made herself a pizza that she took out of the freezer and called her mother on New Jersey from the landline. She tried all the beds like Goldilocks. And the gardener came in and found her, and she tried to say she was George Harrison's wife. Well, he knew who her wife was. And he called the police, even as she's being led away. She's going, I'm his wife. And,
oh my God.
And I kept trying all the door handles to see what kind of pizza does he have in the freezer, because I'm such a numbnut. And who should turn up at the gardener? He probably thought, oh no, another freakazoid. But yeah.
It's interesting that some of these themes we got to see in real life with our experiences with COVID-19. We got to see the CDC, some of it was on TV, but we saw some of it in real life during COVID. So before COVID, we were naive, I think, as a world about some of these things as a whole. But now I think we've seen firsthand how the CDC can be involved in this and how the economy can impact. We also see resources and, up until probably a week ago, I had a hard time buying cat food. And, remember the run on TP and the run on hand sanitizer and how you couldn't find any of that stuff. I mean, I think during that time, I don't know that I wanted to read so much about it, but now I'm really curious about people's stories. So fiction about COVID or TV shows or movies that have those elements are pretty interesting to me now. And I think this look at this fever issue is interesting for readers, kind of not really post-COVID, but as we have learned to adapt to COVID.
Yeah, I think that psychological aspect.
Very good points. The thing about the anthology that really made me happy as the publisher and Meg as the editor was everybody turned in different fever stories. We've got one COVID story, really. And when you think about it, fever is fever, but I love that everybody had different takes. And COVID is still controversial for some people. I mean, there are people who say it isn't real. I don't know how they can say that, but I'm just really glad that everybody participated. Thank you. And did so with just such great passion. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Together.
Yes, and thank you guys for coming on today. It's always such an interesting experience getting a bunch of authors together. We do it once a month, usually through our Best-Selling Reads group. But it's interesting being able to talk to a group of writers who've worked together, because writing can be so solitary a lot of the time. And being able to, get those different perspectives and put people's different skills together on a big project like this. It's always fun to hear how it went and, the good and the bad and how things worked out. But it sounds like you guys, aside from the one plagiarism issue, went fairly smoothly overall.
Well, it made me sad because I liked her story. I'm just going to tell you briefly. It was about the horse racing industry in Hawaii. And when she first sent it, I thought, interesting, because there is no horse racing in Hawaii, but it was actually set during the time of the last King Kalakaua. And I thought, okay, the story's a bit patchy. Now I know why, because she's cobbled together all these other stories, but the story is really about why there is no horse racing in Hawaii. So I wish she hadn't stolen other people's work, and it would have been in there too. Because horse racing and gambling is a fever.
Yeah, definitely. An interesting perspective had it been original.
Yeah, yes.
But yeah, well, thank you guys.
Thank
and
you
where
so
can...
much, Joshua.
No problem. I was happy to do it. And just tell everyone real quickly where the anthology is available and where they can learn more about you guys.
It's available on Amazon. The paperback's coming out soon. And thank you so much.
Thanks again for listening to Author Life Podcast. For more information on the podcast or guest authors, check out the links in the show description. If there's a topic you'd like to learn more about, find me online and send me suggestions anytime.